Commissioner Roach?
Hello, Chief. Oh, I'm sorry. Chief's not here.
So we
Excuse
do
me.
have a,
Hello, Lieutenant.
yeah, we do have a quorum.
Okay. Are you ready to begin, Lieutenant?
Yes, I am, sir.
Okay. We're going to call this regular board meeting of the Honorable Board of Police Commissioners to order. The roll call of commissioners: Commissioner Cruz,
Here.
Commissioner Cuminato,
Here.
Commissioner Farrow,
Here.
and myself, Commissioner Roach, are present. We have a quorum. The first item this evening for us would be the acceptance of the minutes of the special board meeting held on September 23rd. Also acceptance of the minutes of the special board meeting held on September 28th, and same for the special meeting that was held on October 12th, all of this year. Unless there's any questions or comments or corrections to the minutes, I'll entertain a motion to combine those items and accept the minutes as stated.
So be.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Those minutes are accepted. The Chief of Police is not with us this evening. Do we have anybody that the chief has designated, Lieutenant, or is that not?
Yes,
the case?
Lieutenant Cotto will be speaking on behalf of Chief Garcia tonight.
Okay, we have Lieutenant Cotto under new business. Is this something separate, Lieutenant Cotto, that the chief asked you to address the board?
Good afternoon, commissioners. I did have some things regarding the chief that have to be put on hold. We have some new items that I will bring to your attention. I could go now, or I could go during my normal position. It's up to you guys.
Why don't you finish off at least as it regards to the chief?
Okay. So we recently had our lieutenant's test, which was processed by civil service. We have a preliminary list. We're waiting for the list to be certified. I believe that the prospective lieutenants are going through the appeal phase right now. So there's going to be a lot of movement within the department. We recently put out our 2022 allocation. So there's currently 9 openings for lieutenant. A lot of the people on the list are within what we consider specialized assignments. So there's going to be a lot of movement in the department, which is good for motivation. I know a lot of people want to try out different things. So hopefully tomorrow we'll be putting out bids for new assignments, which will, create some more movement. But we're looking forward to the 9 new lieutenants. For the months of October, November, and December, the chief has started some fundraising for both breast cancer and the male cancer month, which is in November. She actually extended it out to December. So right now she's taking donations for shoelaces. We're doing pink patches. I believe we may have some ribbons around. She's extended the invitation to you guys if you guys are interested in taking part and joining us in our fundraiser. I believe there was an article in the newspaper regarding the fundraiser. There was a commands that came out. She encouraged the officers to let the hair on their heads grow, to grow a mustache. So hopefully we can raise some money for childhood cancer. I believe that's what we're donating for this year. So our goal is to kind of move it around and entertain another group for year, but here for childhood cancer. Like I said, the other topic that I was on the agenda for, fortunately, we won't be prepared to speak on. we'll be bringing it up during the next meeting. As of right now, I believe that's all I have for you guys. But yeah, if you guys are interested in the fundraising activities, either contact me or contact Lieutenant O'Donnell. I'm sure we'll relay the message to the chief. Other than that, if anyone has any questions, I could entertain the question.
And I'm sorry, Lieutenant. Did you say that you would not be ready to speak regarding the policy and procedure item on our agenda this evening?
No, that was part of the original matter, but the chief had me speak for her on the agenda. Unfortunately, we hit a delay. So I
Okay,
won't talk about the matter that the chief delegated me to speak on. But I'll be prepared, on my line.
Okay. Okay, I'm sorry, just wanted to make sure. Anybody have any questions for the lieutenant?
No,
Okay.
thank you.
Thanks, Lieutenant. Next item is the report from the union, Sergeant Seeley. Good evening.
Good evening, Commissioners. Last month, we did have 2 recent promotions of detectives. So the union is happy to hear and see our members that are moving up in the ranks. Certainly officers who've been promoted to detective is an important thing in our career field. As the lieutenant spoke, the lieutenant's test is complete. We are still in the 30-day appeals process and looking forward to seeing some of our sergeants being promoted to lieutenant. Last month, we spoke about having a ceremony for 2 plaques that have actually been installed at the police memorial. I believe that we have a date firmed up. We will make sure that we invite all the police commissioners to that ceremony. That'll be in early November. For the months of November and December, the union, Local 1159, is partnering with Feeding America. Local 1159 is advocating to end hunger. We will be accepting gift cards, monetary donations, and non-perishables. So all of that information will be put up on our website, and we will make sure that we get that out through social media. We're also looking forward to cooperating with the Marine Toys for Tots here in Bridgeport in December. We will have a place most likely right in our patrol division where we'll have be collecting toys for tots. And currently that's all I have for the Board of Police Commissioners at this point.
Any of the commissioners have any questions for the
I was
union
wondering-
president?
I was wondering, is it safe to say who the 2 promotions of detectives are?
Yeah, that would be Officer Shimshak, Matt Shimshak, and Officer, now detectives, Matt Shimshak and Freddie Neal.
Okay, my congratulations to them.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Anybody else? Okay.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Sergeant.
Sarge.
Thank you, Commissioners. Have a great evening. Appreciate it.
Yeah, bye-bye.
2.
We have no report this evening from Internal Affairs. We will move on to the clerk's report on the status of pending matters. Lieutenant O'Donnell.
Commissioners, if you'd like to have Lieutenant Grech is waiting, Mr. Uquidi and Mr. Robeson, we can delay my
Okay.
report to the end if you'd like.
Are you talking about maybe if how long of a report are we looking at? A few minutes?
Mine is very small. It's just regarding a next meeting for a board of inquiry for our remaining cases.
Okay, all right, we can come back to it then. That's fine. We'll go to new business. First item is the request of Lieutenant Cotto to address the board regarding review and approval of policy and procedure general order 3.01, use of force. general, and 3.05 reporting investigating force. Lieutenant, maybe I'll ask you the same question. Do you expect this to be lengthy? I mean, maybe we'll go to Lieutenant Grech and the city engineer, if that's okay.
That's fine. I don't.
All right. Yep. Okay. My apologies already. The other item on a new business is a request from Lieutenant Paul Grech to address the board regarding crosswalk on Madison Avenue and a major safety issue. Lieutenant Grech.
Commissioners, thank you for taking the time just to hear me on this issue. So last week I engaged in conversation with Mr. Aguidi about a crosswalk that's been approved to go in front on Madison Avenue in front of Skane School. And I explained to Mr. John, because of the curvature of the road, the speed of these cars, and we had a fatality 2 years ago, it's a very dangerous location to put a crosswalk, giving a false sense of security for the parents and the kids to cross over. I just think we could definitely have a fatality there, a serious accident. So I explained this to John, and he said it's already came in front of the commission. You'd have to go in front of the commission. So I would really respectfully to reconsider this approval for this crosswalk, given the safety issues it's going to occur.
I had a chance myself to speak with Lieutenant Grech on this, was able to at least get a good overhead look where the proposed crosswalk is to be. And I agree with Lieutenant. It doesn't seem like an ideal place to put a crosswalk. It looked like it might in fact be quite dangerous. And that's the line of sight is very limited. This is an area of the road which curves, and it gives pedestrians a false sense of security when they're crossing, when they would be crossing. So I would agree and urge the board to whether it's a question we can bring it up for reconsideration, or I know it's been approved, but it hasn't been obviously it hasn't been installed yet. And I'll ask the lieutenant. This wasn't something that when was this approved? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Sure, I have a memorandum in front of me. It was approved for June 16th of 2020.
Okay. I believe our rules would call for a reconsideration at the following meeting, and we're past that. Not that it needs to necessarily move forward, but I think we can at least, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lieutenant, I think we can at least inform the city attorney or the city engineer's office not to move forward with the installation. And it may not be an appropriate time for reconsideration. We may have to wait 6 months in order to reverse it. But meanwhile, I think we can at least order the city engineer's office to avoid working on this request.
Great.
Through the chair, this is John Arquidi. So public facilities, lines and signs would be the implementing authority, I guess you'd call it, for putting this in. We spoke to Lieutenant Grech. We agree. We recommended that this crosswalk not be installed. So I don't have a problem reaching out to lines and signs and having them hold off on installation if that's helpful.
Is John Arquidi on the call?
Yes, he is, Commissioner.
Okay. All right.
Sorry, can you hear me?
I'm sorry, who was that?
That was
Sorry,
John.
can you hear me? This is John.
Oh, that, John, yeah, no, we can hear you now. Did you
Okay,
hear
sorry.
that, the last bit of the conversation here?
Yeah, so what I was trying to say, and I don't think you heard me, was I don't have a
No.
problem reaching out to Lines and Signs. They would be the authority on installing. We can have them hold off until you reconsider or make a determination. We recommended not to install this crosswalk, so I don't have an issue with reaching out if that's what the board would like.
I think we're all on the same page as far as that's concerned. It was just a question I had on procedure. But we
May I ask a
can,
question?
certainly.
So I don't have it in front of me. This was approved over a year ago in June of 2020. My question is, based on the city engineer, if the crosswalk, and I can't picture exactly where it is, I know where Skane School is. If I have no doubt that the crosswalk, if placed there, may cause a huge fatality, but why wasn't this observation made prior to the recommendation? I mean, we didn't know that. Obviously, if we had known that background information, we wouldn't be discussing this today. So I'm just wondering, why was it approved and why wouldn't the city engineer recognize that? It may be irrelevant
So-
right now because we're reconsidering, but I like to know how is that?
Through
Why didn't we know that
the
then?
chair.
Go right
Through
ahead,
the
John.
chair, if I may. So my office actually recommended not to install this crosswalk. We said it would cause a dangerous situation, and we agree with Lieutenant Craig. It's not a good spot for it. It's going to create a false sense of security. You'll have a student trying to cross there with their face in their phone, and they're not going to be paying attention. The drivers will not know that the crosswalk is there because they'll speed around the corner. Our recommendation at the time of request was to not install this crosswalk. The board, and I wasn't on the meeting, so I'm not sure why the board decided to approve it, but it was against our recommendation, which is your prerogative, but our original recommendation was to not install this crosswalk.
No, and so if I may add to that, I have no doubt that the initial request was not to install it, but what was the justification behind it? When you decided not to install it, that we would actually object and consider otherwise?
No, I mean, again, the installation doesn't happen through my department. That happens through public facilities. And it's a matter of budget. It's a matter of resources. It's a matter of being able to get out there and install it. I can't answer why it's taken this long to install. Again, it's not my department to run. My only guess would be that it's a manpower and resources issue.
And again, I think we're all on the same page here. Just to move forward on this. If it's a question that we through our own rules that we don't have the ability at the present time to officially reconsider, I would at least entertain a motion that the clerk notify Lines and Signs and public facilities as to our concern and ordering them to hold off on any installation of this crosswalk. And I'll have a conversation with the city attorney to see what's proper as far as our abandoning this idea officially. Is that fair enough?
That sounds great.
Okay. Entertain a motion from one of the commissioners to that effect.
Yeah, I'll move to do that, but I have a question too.
Okay, we'll get a second and then we'll have we can discuss the motion. So there's a motion on the floor to notify public facilities, specifically Lines and Signs, not to act on this, which was previously approved. Is there a second?
Mhm.
It's been seconded by Commissioner Cuminato. Discussion on the motion. Mr. Farrow.
Yeah, I just, and maybe this is to piggyback on what Anna is talking about. It appears that this was a a decision by the city initially to not approve this thing, and then we went over ahead and changed it and decided to approve it anyway. And then now we're hearing about it being so dangerous to the point of possibly having kids killed in the crosswalk kind of thing. And I'm just curious why that wasn't part of the discussion initially when it was denied. Like, why aren't we getting more information if the city is denying stuff? I mean, it's one thing to say, hey, look, we don't think we should do this, but it's something else if you have a grave concern that people might get killed in the process.
Right. That's exactly what I was getting at.
That's good information, you know, that clearly we have at the time.
Through the chair, could I address that?
Go right ahead, Lieutenant.
So it was by the grace of God, I was talking with engineering about the new culvert site up on Madison Avenue and the speeding of the cars. And that's how I got into this conversation. And John made mention that, they're putting a crosswalk. I said, you can't put a crosswalk there. It's so dangerous. So, I asked John, I said, with all respect, if any crosswalks or traffic stuff go in front of any schools, can you please let me know before you go in front of the commission? Let me do an evaluation. And this way I could address it, if I feel it to be a safety concern. Because sometimes, when you just get an engineer report, they're looking at one thing, where I can give you a more detailed explanation with the students, how they're crossing, age of the students, so forth, how many kids are walking. So, yeah, I think we've caught something that could have been really bad. And I think it will just improve now from the future by just, if anything goes near a school, I'll get with John before and come in front if that's okay with you guys.
That makes sense. And I think maybe to address the concerns of Commissioner Cruz and Commissioner Farrow, if you can instruct the city traffic engineer, if it's one thing to have a negative recommendation, but if it's something that involves safety, especially when in this case when you're dealing with our kids, maybe you can have the recommendation be a little bit more adamant that this needs to be denied and why.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Okay, so John, if you can pass that along to Powell, that would be appreciated.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think we'll do a better job of just communicating in general with
That's okay,
Lieutenant Grech when it comes to things like that.
And Powell's the first one to tell you that, on occasion, we do, for various reasons, we do go against his recommendation. But something like this, obviously shouldn't have happened. So we'll work to avoid that in the future, I guess. Moving on to old business, which is a request from John Arquidi, city engineer, to address the board regarding review and approval of the speed hump policy. John, you have the floor again.
All right. Thank you very much. So I'm coming back to revisit the speed hump policy. I reached out to the board a couple times to see if anyone had any questions and any concerns about what we're presenting as far as policy goes. I haven't heard anything back. So I don't know if there's additional discussion that needs to be had or if we want to proceed with the policy as is. I guess I would open up to questions if there are any.
Any questions for the city engineer?
John, I noticed on
Yes.
page 3, there are some, the size of the intersection, or I should say the positioning and size of the speed hump. Are there options between that one particular size? Because I've been over speed humps that slows traffic down just when they're very low. Just the fact that people know they're coming and there are multiple ones across the road, they slow down. It causes cars to slow down speed. Are these the high ones? I don't know, I haven't gone over a speed hump in a long time. Hello?
John, you still there? I'm not cut off. I know Commissioner Cruz.
Sorry, my
go ahead.
microphone's not working well. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. So the speed humps that we've been installing around town are generally a 3-inch rise from the front of the taper up and then back down over 12 feet. That speed hump is designed so that you can traverse it at about 25 miles an hour and not have much of an issue. It gets uncomfortable when you get into more excessive speeds, 35, 45 or higher. So the intent of that size speed hump is not to stop traffic or have people slow down to a 5 or 10 mile an hour. It's intended to be able to go across it at the safe posted speed limit and not above it. There are lots of different options. There's elevated crosswalks, there's speed tables, there's intersection speed tables that we could do. The policy, I think, is kind of a catch-all, and we'd have to determine case by case what's the right application for each location.
So should that be incorporated into the policy? If it's a catch-off and it's not necessarily how the measurement is not exactly what stated? You know what I mean?
I don't think so, because I think there's some liberties in that policy, and that we've said that based on engineering judgment and based on specific criteria of road and speed limit and things like that, we have some leeway in what we assign to that road. I mean, things change as well. So industry standards
absolutely.
change, rules, federal rules change. So those kind of things. Otherwise, I'd be before you every year to revise striping and revise, because things like that change on the federal level year by year. They make modifications to signage, they make modifications to striping. So, I mean, if we want to try to give more typical examples of it, I mean, that's something that we could do administratively, and we could definitely share that with the board. It's not something that I think is going to affect the procedure and the policy. Each case is going to be different. So.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions for the city engineer on this?
So this is effective already, or it's going to go into effect?
We haven't used it really. I mean, the only locations we've been doing speed humps at are around schools and around parks. So we've taken some liberty at utilizing them in those locations. But as far as requests for neighborhood streets and things like that, the petition would apply. So you'd have 50% of the population on that street would have to buy into the speed hump. We're not utilizing this policy until you all approve it. So.
I see. Okay. And so when we approve it, it goes into effect how soon? I mean, I don't know how many requests you have. Do you have a long list?
Yeah, we have quite a few.
Okay.
And we've started studying some of them and determined some of the speed conditions out there. It's just we haven't gotten to the application process because we haven't had it approved through the board yet.
I understand. Okay. Makes sense.
Commissioner Roach,
Yes, sir.
can I ask a question of the engineer?
Please do.
I just want, and you may have already addressed this, but I just want to verify or clarify the process again, because I think last time we were talking about, the time before, we were talking about how people go about requesting a speed hump and who, what channels they would have to go through to request them. I just wanted clarification on that.
Yeah, so I think the way we have it in the policy currently, and I don't have it in front of me, I'm sorry, but I believe we have it being requested through the city council member.
Right. And so that was one of my concerns when we talked about it at the time, that everybody would have to go through the council and not be able to go through, I guess, the normal channels to do that.
Yeah.
That is, I mean, so I guess, well, and I guess it was a city council person, and then there was some talk about having to be a homeowner at one point. I think we were talking about, and I have some reservations about that too. And I don't know if that.
So yeah, I think what you're speaking to is the petition portion of the application. So we have it listed, and this is how we do it on other policies in the city. We have the owner being listed as the petitioner. So when you get a signature on an owner, say for example, on a street that has 100 people on it, you need 50%. You need, or it might be 2/3. You need 2/3 of those people that live on the street to approve it. The reason why we use owner as opposed to renter or tenant is owners generally stay the same. Tenants sometimes rotate over. I guess that's not always the case because people can sell their property. But owner buy-in, I feel, is the appropriate way to go because you have a more consistent and longer term ownership on things rather than a tenant that might move out a year later.
Right, and I think one of the concerns I had was that in some areas you have more tenants probably than owners, and then those are the individuals who would be impacted by changes in traffic or anything else, and not necessarily the absentee landlord. And so that's where my question came from. And then I know we're trying to limit, I guess, the number of people who make requests, but I guess my question is, do we want to make it so difficult to the point where people necessarily have to go through one particular individual? And I'm not saying it's not different than going, say, to the clerk, because that is one individual. But I guess my concern always becomes trying to make things too difficult for people to get things done in the city.
John, and is it a question of you have to go through one of your council members from the district, or could it be any council member?
Good.
But
Thank you, David.
I mean, I think
to Ed's point, there might be a situation where someone may not be able to reach their council people and may be familiar with another one. Does it say it has to be from the district, or any council person can bring it for
I mean,
any part of the city?
It probably makes the most sense to have it be for that district.
Oh, no, of course it
I
is.
think
I'm just saying there's going to be, in a perfect world, that's how it would work. But, we have, sometimes there's council members that aren't very responsive, and people get frustrated, and they may reach out to someone else on the city council, not necessarily someone who represents their district.
Yeah.
And being that, if it has to go through the city council or city council member, that could very well happen at some point.
Yeah, I think the intent was just to have some conduit to get it before the board. I suppose it could go through some other entity. I just don't necessarily want to open it up to,
right. Right, and I understand
the general public, and then we'll be getting inundated with hundreds of these possibly. And a lot of times I guess we'll be able. I don't want to throw out applications because they don't have petitions either. We might get applications that have one signature, one property owner, and then we almost are immediately going to throw it out because there's no neighborhood buy-in. Council members, for good, bad, or indifferent, have the ability to kind of get that local community together and determine what they really want. That was my thought process. If you all have a different kind of conduit to get these before the board, I don't oppose it. I'm trying to make it kind of streamlined.
No, and that's totally understandable, but I could see, issues coming up depending on some council people are more competent than others, or you hate to see a legitimate request not go anywhere because they either couldn't reach the council person, or the council person ultimately did not relay it in. So, and
Commissioner Roach, may I say something?
yes, ma'am.
So I appreciate, is it John that I'm talking to?
John,
Yeah.
John's
John.
fine. Yeah.
So I wholeheartedly believe in streamlining things. And it makes sense to go through, that the residents will go through the district council or the owners, for example. And I also believe that just because you rent, you should still have some right to put a petition together and go through their district council. And keep in mind that I'm saying two different things. I think that the residents, not just owners, should put a petition together and they should go through their district city council person. Now, if a city council person or member is too busy and can't handle it, it should still be run through them. And then, city council people can become territorial. They're not just going to appreciate any city council member taking over their district. So as long as, if they're too busy, they should just give permission to another city council person to take over. But you still go through the petition, whether you're an owner or resident, and get those 100 signatures or however many you need to get, the 2/3 of 100+ people. That's the way I look at it.
If I can make a suggestion, I know I think everybody's interested in seeing this move forward. That if there seem to be issues that we possibly may need to tweak, we can move this forward and revisit it and amend the agreement at any time. Is that how you understand it, John?
I suppose we could bring it back to VPC for modification of, we'd be coming back for another vote, I would think. I don't know the bylaws of the VPC. I don't know what legally you can and can't do. So, I don't see why we couldn't change the policy, moving forward.
If there's an aspect of it, that, geez, we obviously would see that it needs improvement, or it should have been done one way as opposed to another way. I mean, if something like that comes up, at least we'd have the opportunity to correct things.
Yeah, I don't think that's uncommon.
And I'm assuming you're interested in moving this forward instead of sitting.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see it move forward so we can review and review what we have and approve, reject, do what we need to do to get applications in properly. That's what I'd like to see. And if there's something that we find that owners are non-responsive and they don't want to help out with the speeding issue on a particular street, and the tenants are more responsive and more eager to get this approved, then maybe we need to modify the policy. Same thing with city council. Maybe city council is not the correct avenue. Maybe it needs to go through the chair of the VPC, or maybe it needs to go through the mayor's office, or maybe it needs to go through some other entity. I don't know.
Any other discussion?
I just think that sometimes the landlords can be anywhere across the nation and not necessarily be accessible and available for something like this. So not to minimize, residents' rights, they should be able to also petition for change in their community for the betterment of the whole.
I agree with that. And if they're getting if they're going through the same process and they're still having to get that many people to sign on, it doesn't really matter if it's a tenant or whatever. I mean, some people live in the same place for decades without owning, and to think that they wouldn't be able to speak about what's going on in their own community just doesn't seem remotely appropriate to me.
Would we either, I think we can do one or two things. We can offer up an amendment to allow renters to have the same abilities as homeowners in this process, or we could and then approve it as amended, Or the other possibility at which I was going to before was to approve this and then revisit it if we see that there's some faults to it that we can correct. Either way is fine with the chair. I'm assuming.
I think both.
Well,
Commissioner Roach?
probably end up being both, but the question is, do we want to amend now regarding the piece that concerns ownership over tenants,
Right.
and put them on an even field, or do we want to just move forward as is and then make the corrections later if we need to? However the board would like to do it.
Well, I think the private, Commissioner Roach, is the appropriate way to do it, to go ahead and make sure, I mean, residents of Bridgeport are residents of Bridgeport, in my mind.
Okay.
Not everybody homeowner. And I think regardless of whether we amend it to add home tenants, that we still, as the Board of Police Commissioners, still have the right to come back and amend if we need to in the future.
On some other issue, sure, but we can.
Correct.
Would you like to address this particular issue this evening, or
Yeah.
would you like kind of take a wait and see what happens approach?
But I mean, what does
Through
it
the
take?
chair, can I offer one more thing?
Go right ahead.
So the one little sticking point to adding renters to this is verification of signature and petition. It's pretty easy to verify an owner. You can go to the tax assessor, you can go to vision appraisal, you can identify the owner, you can see the signature matches the name, and you're good. Verifying a renter is going to be much more difficult from the perspective of my office trying to administer it.
Does it have to be that sophisticated, though, John, in your opinion?
I mean,
if
when we make rules to follow rules, I'm a rule follower, I guess.
Yeah, well, no, that's good.
I'm definitely a rule follower, but how difficult can it be to verify someone's address if they have bills coming to that address? As a matter of fact, especially if you have a city council member, getting those signatures, not necessarily the resident.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's the honor system, so it would be, I don't want to start requesting utility bills and things like that and having to sift through that kind of stuff.
And the signature process is not the end all as far as determining whether or not there's a speed hump on the street.
Correct. It's only one piece of the pie. So we have to verify that there is a speeding issue, that there is
Right, no,
excessive speeding
exactly.
issue.
So, it's not a question of somebody being aggressive and getting one neighbor who wants it, whereas probably most of the neighbors on the street doesn't want it, but one neighbor running out and getting falsifying a bunch of signatures to say, here's more than 50%. That doesn't necessarily mean it's gonna happen.
John, if I may ask one more question and I'll stop here. When you say, cousin, nephew, blah, 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 when we take into account that it should just be the head of the household, one person from that resident, that home, versus
I would think
all six
so.
people that are living in the household?
I'll give you an example. Many years back, I want to say about 10 years back, we put in some speed bumps on Cortland down in Black Rock. The gentleman that wanted them was very adamant about them. When we installed them pretty directly in front of his house. They were temporary nature rubber. Well, his wife called about 2 weeks after we installed them and said, "Why are these here? I need them out of here." So even in households, sometimes there's disagreements on this stuff. That's why that's the reason for the 2/3 majority on the street.
That's
We want to
because
make
they
sure
were
that there's
divorced and
real
they got
buy-in.
back together again, or they were separated.
Because the husband's nuttier. That's why it was. I remember that instance. Yeah, she's a little saner. Everybody
I mean,
wants,
I
and
think
the people that
one
want them, they
person
say, "Yeah, I
should
want
just-
one, but please don't put it in front of my house."
Yeah.
You're going to get a lot of that. And I'm sorry, Commissioner Farrell, do you have something to add?
No, that's just my concern. I'm just
Okay.
reluctant to
Well-
do anything that's more hard to.
How do you want to handle this, Commissioner Farrell? What do you think? You're a legal mind on the board here, so.
Not today. I'm just a police commissioner. I mean, I hear the concerns that about the signatures and everything else, but once again, if you have to have that many people signing off and the council person engaged, the council person is, I mean, if you're already saying that that's the person you should funnel things through or channel things through, then that person should be the watchdog or the guard over their own community if you're already going to put them into the equation. So I don't necessarily see that being an issue per se. And like, for instance, I can live on another side of town and see that there's an issue on another side of town, and it's not uncommon for people to show up at our meetings and speak up, even though they really live in a particular place. So the fact that you're a resident of Bridgeport, and particularly in a particular district, I think should allow you to speak up, right, and allow you a voice, regardless of whether. And so that's my own.
Okay, let's figure out what we're doing with this though. Let's take a vote on it. I think we've kicked it around sufficiently enough. And I think I laid out a couple of options, but how do we want to do it? How do we want to proceed here? Is anybody ready to make a motion? Are we making a motion to approve the policy with, are we doing it with one provision or no?
And the only thing I'm at, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Let's just, all I'm going to ask is that, we just move on this either way.
Well, the only thing I think it's clear what I'm asking for. We can move it forward today. That's just the concern I have. And then there's 3 other commissioners who get to vote.
But
Terminate. So that's just my concern.
I'm just waiting for a motion from somebody.
I'd like to make a motion that we modify it and we approve tonight to include to leave owner of property and or resident if the owner cannot be contacted, just like we're considering the district city council member or other if they are not able to carry out that petition.
Okay, well, let's go with the first one then.
Okay.
Okay. You're saying to modify the policy to include all residents, owners, and tenants.
No.
No. Okay. Why don't you state your motion? I'm sorry.
So the motion is to approve the speed hump policy to include owner and or resident. If the owner cannot be reached, the resident should be allowed to petition on behalf of the owner.
Anybody care to second that?
I mean, it's confusing, but Alex,
Yeah.
based on the fact that we're not, like I said, excluding them, and with the understanding and the caveat being that I understand we can come back and revise it later on. So I'll second it.
Okay. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Are there any opposed?
No.
I understand it to be unanimous. Thank you, commissioners, and thank you, Mr. Arquidi.
Commissioner
Thanks,
Rowe,
Mr.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank
before
you.
John leaves, I do have a question for the approval or the requesting process. If that just stays the same, since I represent the board, I do receive several requests. Shall I just proceed with the same format of sending a request over to the John's office and the traffic engineer's office for the speed humps? And they will then, move the application process forward.
That makes sense with everybody?
I thought John's bigger concern was to streamline it to ensure that it goes through the city council member. instead of directly to the city engineer?
So when I do receive a request from a citizen, I will be refusing it on your behalf and referring it to who?
I think there needs to be if we say city council member, there also needs to be a timeline. It can't just sit there, or there's gotta be a turnaround time. 30 days, I don't know.
So Commissioner,
Go
I
ahead.
represent you and I have to, when I get a request for a handicap sign, traffic sign, speed humps, I have to, within a period of time, respond in a formal, request to the traffic engineer via an email and a formal letter. That's all I'm asking. When I do get these requests, shall I still respond, but have the wording in the letter that the requesters to reach out to the traffic engineer, the council person?
I think that would be
I
the
was
council person.
Yeah, I was only referring to the speed hump. I didn't think about stop signs and all that. That may be a little too much.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about my responsibility when I get a request, a speed hump request. I send a letter over to the traffic engineer on your behalf. With this new policy, will I still be entertaining requests or shall I be?
It sounds like you'd be entertaining the request, but referring them to the appropriate city council people.
Yes.
Okay, and I will
Okay.
do that in writing and copy you on it,
And
No.
yep, and let's see how that
But-
goes.
that we're
Okay.
covered and that I'm not giving the impression that the board or myself are.
No, we're not,
refusing any
we're not
request.
refusing and we're not ducking it. Absolutely. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks,
Yep,
Lieutenant.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go back to item 4A, which is the policy and procedure review.
Thank you,
and
everyone. Have a good night.
approval.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Okay. Lieutenant Cotto,
Sir, hello again.
nice to see you again.
Thank you for taking the time to entertain this. I know, kind of moving along, so I'll try to be as brief as possible. I have two policies in front of you. These were both policies that have already been approved by the board. These are changes that have been mandated from post. So I took the time to highlight all the changes that were mandated by post. Hopefully you have color copies. If not, we go through the highlights.
Lieutenant Cotto,
Yes, sir.
are you waiting for us to respond? Are you going to go through this with us?
Well, I was asking, did you guys want to go through the policies and
Oh,
look at highlights, or did you go through them?
you want to give the highlights, go ahead, and then we'll open up the questions. I'm sorry, Lieutenant.
Okay,
I thought you were waiting for everybody to read
We're
through.
going through them together. So I will start with policy 3.01. In the beginning, there's a bunch of new definitions that are within the body of the policy. Acting in a law enforcement capacity, last resort, mitigation, necessary, officer created jeopardy. There's a definition of police officer, unusual force and unusual risk. This policy had a section that spoke about de-escalation and mitigation. What we did was we reverted it and gave it its own dedicated section. So it begins on page 5. And all this language was actually from post. So we just kind of moved some things around in our current policy and dedicated its own section for de-escalation and mitigation. So law stuff. So we specified, and I know it's within the law of deadly force in defense of property. We spelled it out a little bit more clearer in this policy. In the past, we just kind of used the definition from the law, but we actually have specific location here where we're spelling it out that deadly force restrictions are in defense of property. Once again, our old policy, I'm down to page 13 right now. Our old policy had a section that was dedicated to duty to intervene. This got updated probably based on an incident that happened. And we get into officers acting in undercover capacity. We give some exceptions on page 14. This was probably, once again, one of these incidents that came up, you know, and the policy didn't address it.
You referenced page 13. Was there anything supposed to be highlighted on page 13?
Top of page 13, beginning on D, in policy 3.01. Apologize. You probably have a black and white version.
Yeah, I don't see anything highlighted on page 13.
No,
But
the-
14, yes.
The commissioners received a highlighted version. I believe that Commissioner Cruz is looking at page 13, Lieutenant Cotto, and there's nothing highlighted on that page.
Sorry, the section begins in page 13. The section that's highlighted is on page 14. It starts with letter D.
Meeting.
Got it. Yeah.
Sorry. We go down to page 16. We originally had some language in there about positional asphyxia. We cleaned it up a little bit more.
I'm
And
reading this. Get that. I can't get that.
Commissioner Cuminato, you're not on mute.
I don't have, I have the screen, but I don't have a picture.
Okay, we can hear you though, Matt.
so beginning on page 17, and this is new, where Post is actually taking over the implementation and training regarding use of force. So statewide, we now have one use of force policy, and police officers are being trained the same. So all of our trainers that are training this new use of force policy had to go to Post and receive the updates. So we started training on this new curriculum, and this gives them the authority here on page 17.
I can't get to it. Okay.
I have a question. May I ask, Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
Initially, you used the definition for an active police officer, whether he's in uniform or not, right? As long as he identifies himself, he can assert the law. Am I correct? Or enforce the law?
I don't understand what you're saying.
Okay, so the definition of acting in a law enforcement capacity is any on-duty police officer or any off-duty police officer who identifies himself as such, right? I'm
Yes.
quoting that on page 2,
Yes.
right? So I'm looking at page 13 where nothing is highlighting, but you reference the duty to intervene. Would that officer who, as long as police officer identifies themselves, who's off duty, would they have the authority to intervene?
Well, there's a lot of things you would have to take into consideration. you know, and our policy, you know, addresses these things, you know, is the officer in a position to act within his capacity? Does the officer have his equipment on him? Does this officer has his identification to identify himself? The big difference would be, you know, if you're in full clothing, you have a firearm and you have your badge with you, or I'm walking out of the gym and I have t-shirts and a shorts and I really can't defend myself or defend another person. Am I going to help the situation or am I going to make it worse?
Yeah, but that is a rare occasion, right? An officer would not intervene if he doesn't have his equipment, but if he has his firearm, even if he's off duty, as long as he identifies himself, right, as a law enforcement officer, and he feels he has the power at hand to intervene, he's going to do so. Am I correct?
Is bound by policy, yes.
Okay. That's all I wanted to know. It's not incorporated in that section, and I just wondered if it would be necessary to put that piece in there about an off-duty officer being able to intervene as long as he identified himself and had equipment on hand to do so.
Any other questions? Commissioner Cuminato, do you have a question?
No, I'm trying to get on the computer. I lost it.
That's okay. We have you on audio. We
Oh,
can hear you fine. Evidently, you can hear us fine. So,
definitely. Okay.
oh, I know. Preferably, we'd have you on video as well. But
You want me to move on to 3.0?
yeah. Why don't you run on to the next one, please?
So these policies go hand in hand. 3.01 is the use of force. The 3.05 is the investigation of force. So because we split our policies up in two sections, there was some things regarding the investigation that I had to put in the new policy. And it begins on page 10, where we're talking about the investigation. And now, you know, we're putting it on the investigators for investigating the use of force, which are the supervisors, to determine if the officer had an opportunity to use the escalation method. Page 12 is the second part of this, and it's the reporting of the use of force. It talks about where the department is, I'll read it to you because it's very important. It says, department shall document and maintain a record of any incident which an officer reports is aware of unreasonable, excessive, or illegal use of force as specified in this policy. This record shall include at a minimum the name of the officer, the date, the time, the location of the incident, description of circumstances, and the names of any victims and witness present known. That goes along the line of our discipline program, where we're recording these things if an officer gets charged with a use of force violation. Other than that, I don't have anything else unless anyone else has any questions.
Commissioner Reed? Yes, I
Commissioner
like
Farrell.
that. Lieutenant Cotto, I was just thinking about the training of all this stuff. I realized, or at least it looks like to me, this has a lot to do with the, I guess a lot of the stuff that's been going on with the police brutality and all those concerns and everything else. Looks like they're trying to address it here. But my question is, how are we going about getting training done for all of these officers? I understand they have to be trained by December 31st, I guess, 2022. But then how are we rolling it out? Where, when, how, who's paying for it? That kind of thing, you know?
So right now we're training officers that are on duty so that we're not training them on overtime. I can tell you that Sergeant Collazo, he had 28 people in class today. So we're training as many as we can up front. Because as you know, once we get closer to December of next year, there's going to be those stragglers where we're going to have to kind of chase them down. But now that we have a new commander in training, he is aggressively pursuing people to get people in class. Post actually gave him a PowerPoint. I gave him a copy of the policy just to make sure that everything was in line. And within the next day, he was ready to go and was eager to begin the new training. So they've been moving pretty fast on this. It's challenging, you know, when you get to some of the larger departments like ours, as opposed to like a 50-man department. I'm sure they had their own challenges, but for us, logistically, it could be a nightmare. So I know they're having several opportunities for training a week on the different shifts. I believe there's 3 or 4 trainers that they're currently rotating at the time.
Because I'm looking at some of this stuff and I can only see how, you know, especially if you've been doing this job for an extraordinarily long time, it's going to be, this is a project. This is not,
I know
this
they
is
hear
talking
me.
about,
I think the good thing with us is most of the stuff was already in our policy. I know there's a lot highlighted in there, but I just kind of moved words around just so that it flowed a little bit better. So it's not as new as it appears, because a lot of the stuff was already in there. For example, the duty to intervene. We had it worded differently. We just kind of reworded it. So that wouldn't be anything new to our department members other than the change in language.
all right, so the concern I have then, and you bring up a good point, and this is usually the case, particularly when the public is wanting change and wanting things to be different. A lot of times we already have the policies in place, but the question is, how do we go about enforcing and making sure officers actually carry out the policies as they're written here? Because my experience with officers is not what I see in this paper. And so that's my concern. And that's why I was asking about training, because it's one thing to have it on paper, but it's useless if no one's applying it and no one's holding anyone accountable to it. And so that's where my concern is.
So that's the second part of my job, is the reporting and accountability. So I have to report to Post. During the last meeting, the chief told you guys that we became Tier 1 accredited. So yeah, I'm reporting every day on these cases. I go back and I look through them and I have to report on them. If there's something wrong or something that needs to be addressed, then we'll bring it to the officer's attention or we'll bring it to the chief's attention. But that's the good thing about being an accredited agency, where, you know, we have to report on these things, and I have to report
with everything if you do.
We have annual use of force reports, we have annual pursuit reports, and we have annual motor vehicle stop reports. So between those three, the supervision and the accountability that I do, it's almost like a 3-pronged method to catch, you know, or not to catch, but to ensure that our officers are following the policy. And if they're not, then they're addressed on an individual basis.
Thank you. I just wanted to bring that out and you know, I'm sure you've heard it before, but I feel like it needs to be reiterated consistently so that people start to understand that they need to start following the policies. Because part of the reason I think we get into trouble a lot of times is because not because the policies don't exist, it's because people don't actually apply them. And so that's, you know, but that's just my, but I appreciate you going through everything and highlighting what we have here.
No problem. I figured I'd make it as easy as possible.
Thank you.
Lieutenant Cotto, anything else you'd like to add?
No, I'm just going to entertain a motion to, or ask to accept both policies.
Unless there's any other questions, I'll entertain a motion. So the motion would be to approve the 2 policies that we reviewed this evening.
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Been seconded by Commissioner Cuminato. All those in favor?
Right.
Any opposed? Okay. Motion's been approved. Thank you, Lieutenant.
Thanks, Lieutenant.
Thank you. To give you a quick update on the program, I know the chief told you that the last meeting that we became Tier 1 accredited. I'm about 25% into Tier 2. So I'm hoping in the next couple months we'll be ready for a review with Post So we're moving along. Should be proud of your police department. They're doing a phenomenal job, you know, accepting the change. Like you said, Commissioner Farrell. Sometimes the change isn't easy, but you know, they are receptive to change. So thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, we have one other item under old business. It's actually an addendum, 5B, which is a request from Mr. Jacob Robeson from City Planning, OPED, to address the board regarding the approval of implementation of pavement markings and signs for a new segment of the Pequannock River Bicycle Trail connecting Beardsley and Seaside Park. Jacob, thank you very much for your patience.
No problem.
Okay, and the floor is yours.
Hello, Commissioners. You may recall, I believe this was in 2019, that I presented to you regarding Pequannock River Trail, our great new bicycle path that's currently in construction to connect Seaside and Beardsley Parks. We're making good headway on constructing the trail right now, and we're not actually going to finish it this year, but we're finishing it up in the spring due to a lot of COVID complications having a huge impact on the construction industry. However, in the meantime, what I would like to ask is that the Board of Commissioners entertain new portions of the bicycle trail on John Street and Broad Street. Am I able to present to share screen?
That I don't know.
No, I don't believe so, Jacob.
Okay.
Do that. They do have the handout that you gave me.
Yeah, I could just work with the letter that I have and the map. So what I'm proposing here is starting from the southern end of the trail. You could probably follow along with your map here. Is on Broad Street between Railroad Avenue and North Frontage Road. I'd like to implement on-road share the lane markers. And then on Broad Street between North Frontage Road and John Street, an on-road painted bicycle path separated from traffic lanes, and then swinging right on Broad Street, swinging right on John Street toward Water Street, on-road share the lane markers. So these, the way these lines and signs would be implemented are the same standards that I presented to you previously. You can see on page 3 and 4 what the actual lines and signs would look like. Notable here is that there's not going to be any elimination of parking in downtown. The Sharrows will basically be in the traffic lanes, making markings that inform drivers that there are bicyclists who ride on these roads, and you should be aware of them. And then on Broad Street in between North Frontage Road and John Street, we have significantly wide lanes there, and these bicycle lanes will actually do really good to narrow down those traffic lanes and control speeds there. Less like highway lane widths and more like widths that are suitable for downtown. So this, we know that there's bicyclists who ride on these portions already through our monitoring of the city scooter program, our ability to route where scooter riders ride. And these new portions of path would not only provide an extra extra safety for those who already ride on city streets, but also potentially get new patrons to downtown businesses and also safely. So that is my presentation. If there are any questions.
Any questions? Everybody understand the changes here from the original presentation? Any questions for Jacob?
Yeah, Jacob, I was just wondering, from Seaside to Beardsley, I know that it sounds like the streets will become more narrow. Am I correct?
In some portions.
In some portions?
Yeah, and yeah, so when, as I said the last time I presented to you, the infrastructure that we're looking to implement, we're doing it with the highest amount of safety for bicycle riders in mind, but also considering, you know, that we have traffic in the city and we need that traffic to move along at reasonable speeds.
Maura, see.
Yeah. So I imagine that there will be signs just about everywhere. Would the speed limit be decreased in many of those areas as a result, or become more visible? Because we're going to have bikers now on the streets, and I think it's a lovely thing, right? I think it's a wonderful thing. It's a
Yeah,
healthy, right, adventure
certainly.
for many people to take advantage of. But we know that our streets are congested. As a result, it seems like we have 5 cars per household. You know, there's more cars
Yeah.
on the streets now.
So,
Commissioners, if I may,
I'm
Right
sorry.
ahead. Right ahead, Commissioner
Can he-
Kuminato.
Can
If
he
we
answer the
get-
question that I posed first?
I didn't, I thought that was a statement more than a question. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. No. So along with making these statements, I mentioned, are there going to be more signs indicating the speed maybe being decreased so that cars are more cautioned about driving through recklessly when we're going to have bikes now on the streets?
right, through the chair, on portions of the street where we'll be constructing the trail, we won't be reducing traffic speeds. Traffic speeds are generally standardized throughout the city on most different types of roadways. But what we will be doing is we're putting up signs, as you can see, that showing that there's a bicycle lane, that just really making sure that drivers are aware of bicyclists, because the main thing about bicycle safety is that bicyclists and drivers can coexist at current speeds on the roads. The most important thing about bicycle safety is that drivers are aware that there are bicyclists that they have to watch out for. And that's the most important thing. And that's kind of through Plan Bridgeport and our Complete Streets Design Manual. That's something that we're trying to change through signage and outreach, that, you know, we have bicyclists on the road and we want people to be more aware while they're driving, watching out for them.
Yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Kuminato, you have a question?
yes, I did. If we're looking to get this bike traffic downtown, I think we need those bicycle locks where you put the front wheel in or something and lock it. So when you go out, let me go to the restaurant or something. You understand what I'm saying?
You mean bicycle racks?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh yeah. So there are actually several initiatives right now that OPED is working on with installing bicycle racks. Several of those are in downtown. We have a really nice bicycle rack installation that we're putting and at the train station on that grassy area, on the northern heading portion of Water Street. There's a few other installations that we're doing in downtown and all around the city at parks, educational institutions, community centers, hospitals. We have about, I want to say like 45 installations around the city that I'm currently working on right now. So all of this is all part of a large effort to cater to bicyclists, which is what we've heard over and over again through our outreach and planning in the last few years, especially with Plan Bridgeport, Complete Streets. People want more bicycle infrastructure. Our residents do.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none. Entertain a motion to approve the request of Mr. Robertson.
Make a motion to approve the request.
Commissioner Cruz has moved to approve. Is there a second?
Aye.
Seconded by Commissioner Cuminato. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Okay. Motion is passed. Thank you very much for being with us this evening, and thank you again for your patience.
Definitely, no problem. Thank you very much, commissioners.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you, Jacob.
Okay, going back in regular order of the agenda, we have to return to item 3D, which is the clerk's report on the status of pending matters and/or special reports.
Commissioners, we have 5 cases left of very small degree and violation of policies. I have several dates that I've planned out for November for us. If we were to meet and do a board of inquiry regarding these cases, to look at, do they, go on further to a full Barrows hearing, or do you decide to dismiss? This is something that was done, has always been done many years ago. And I was just like to ask if you'd like to plan to have a meeting to discuss these cases. I will have copies for you. We can plan our schedule in January, hoping to, with some of these cases, if we were to proceed with a full Barrows, it's certainly something we would be able to do 2 or 3 in an evening, and planning that as well too. I do have November 4th, the 9th, the 11th, the 18th, and the 23rd, if this is something that you'd be interested in getting together with for possibly an hour or 2, to sit down and look at what is remaining, with our Barrows load in cases.
Those are all Tuesdays you mentioned?
Those are Tuesdays and Thursdays. So November 4th.
Okay.
Is a Thursday, the 9th is a Tuesday, the 11th a Thursday, the 18th is our regular meeting. The 18th is a Thursday and the 23rd is a Tuesday. We certainly do have Tuesdays open, Commissioner Roach.
Okay. What do you guys think?
So we just need 2 days, essentially?
And one of the cases we addressed a year and a half ago, it was a citizen complaint that was a 2-portion. There was a small charge sustained, and then other charges were dismissed, and the citizen wanted to come in to exercise her second step Barrows case. So we did settle that portion of that case, if you remember. And then the other part of that case was one charge of lack of service and just reporting in that. So that was one of the cases. So
Are we looking at the, what'd you say, the first Thursday of November?
yeah, yep, November 4th.
November 4th. Or the 9th and the 11th of the following week.
Yep, the 9th, the 11th. The 23rd is that's the Thanksgiving week.
Right.
Again, I'm just giving you the
Right.
option. This is the way you'd like to proceed. I think we can wrap up, these cases early in the new year to, clear our schedule. So we don't have anything, hanging over our heads.
How is everybody on Thursday, the 4th?
Good.
Okay,
The 9th and the 11th. I can't go beyond the 18th. I'm not
Okay.
available that week
Let's-
of
let-
Thanksgiving.
got it. Let's start with the 4th then. Does that work for you, Matt? Okay,
Yeah, and again, it will be considered a board of inquiry. I will have the packets for you. This does not involve, this union or the city, and it's just discussing and looking at these cases and moving them forward. So, we'll notice a meeting for November 4th at 6 p.m. at City Hall Annex. Thank you, commissioners. That's all I have.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant.
Thanks, Lieutenant.
All right, we have nothing under correspondence. We have one item under letters of appreciation, and it's from the Deputy Chief of the Milford Police Department on behalf of Sergeant Ronald Jersey for his assistance with the Milford PD during an incident regarding a welfare check of a Bridgeport resident, whatever the hell that was. We have nothing under widow's pension, and before we go to a couple of addendums, the one thing we have on our agenda is a request from the city engineer's office to approve the following traffic request, which is an installation of no parking tractor trailer sign on Bunnell Street from Crescent Avenue to Williston Street. Is there a motion to approve that request?
So moved.
Is there a second? Come on, Anna.
Waiting
I
for
got it.
Commissioner Farrell.
Motion's been made. Is there a second? Is there a second?
2 seconds.
I didn't hear 1 second. I'm sorry, Ed.
No, I didn't. Second either. So who do you have as moving? Because I moved. I thought.
Yeah, no, I had you making the motion. I'm still waiting on a second, I believe.
I'm sorry. Second.
It's been seconded by Commissioner Cruz. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Moving to other traffic items, we have an addendum. Installation of a 15-minute parking zone to include 4 parking spaces. This is on John Street, on the side of the Margaret Morton building. And the parking enforcement cashier's office has relocated to the first floor. The idea is to allow 4 parking spaces for the purpose of individuals who will be using the cashier's office. And folks that are stopping to pay their tickets. Any questions on that?
I don't quite understand it. I don't have it in my packet. I don't know what you're
Okay.
referencing.
So Commissioner, I did send this to you twice as an addendum, so it should be sitting in your
In my email.
email. Just a brief overview on this, if I may, Commissioner Roach. The parking enforcement office was located on the second floor of City Hall, and they were moved now to City Hall Annex. And they need a place to have a cashier, more access. So this was a last minute request that we were asked to move forward because of this relocation.
As of now, that area of John Street is probably the only stretch where there's no parking meters in the downtown area. So that they would be the ideal spot for signs indicating parking enforcement, ticket paying only, or whatever, however it was going to be worded.
I understand. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, entertain a motion to approve.
So move.
It's been moved. Is there a second? Thank you, Ed. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. That's been approved.
Commissioner Cruz, so when I receive requests, or I'm sorry, approvals, after I officially submit my agenda on behalf of the board, I have to submit officially an addendum. And the only way that I send it out to you is via email, and it's usually, right after or the day of, so.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I just haven't had a chance to go over it. And I didn't want to speak on something I don't know anything about. I had not read it. So thank you.
But the other item, traffic matter for that's on an addendum is 9A 3, which is the request for the installation of a temporary two-way stop sign at Barnum Avenue and Helen Street. And there's been paperwork with that addendum as well. This is coming from Max Perez in OPED. And I'm sorry, I'm just going through it again. Okay. Has to do with there was a construction of a metal fence, which now interferes with sight distance. And this is temporary. Anybody have any questions? Okay.
you say-
I'm sorry?
No, you said something about temporary.
Yeah, no, it's temporary based on the construction of a metal fence that is in conjunction with, there's a demolition project going on. So with the temporary fence, it hinders the sight distance and therefore requires a temporary stop sign there, two-way stop. So is there a motion to approve?
I'll approve that.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor? No one's in favor.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. The motion's been approved. The only, before we adjourn, I believe the young lady has been approved by the full council for the commission, and anticipating at our at our next meeting, we'll be back up to full strength, seven commissioners. So with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Oh,
Aye.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Thank you, commissioners.
thank
We
you,
are
everyone.
adjourned.
Have a good
Night,
night.
Commissioners.
Bye,
Night.
Lieutenant.
Bye.
Night.